few weeks ago, the Atlanta Falcons traded Julio Jones to the Titans. While this came as a surprise to many, this opened the door for Calvin Ridley to be the featured receiver in this offense. Last year, he had his breakout season. He finished with over 1,300 yards on 90 receptions. He also caught 9 touchdowns. After finishing his first 2 years in the NFL with just over 900 yards, this was obviously a huge improvement. In this video, I wanted to see how Ridley was using this offense, and I want to look closely at what makes him special. Spoiler alert, it all comes down to his route running. Before we begin, if you can do me a huge favor and like and subscribe to this channel, I'd greatly appreciate that. So I want to start this video by focusing on one of my favorite plays. This one in particular, it showcases a lot of the high quality traits that I kept seeing while going through his film. Let's take a close look. This play happened in his game against Tampa Bay in week 14. The Falcons are running a deep smash on the right with a backside dig on the left. This is all run with the threat of play action from the backfield. The goal of this play is to suck the linebackers in and use the threat of a leaking tight end on the right to open up a hole for Ridley up the sideline. That's pretty much what happened here. Meanwhile, the Bucs are in cover 6. Since Sean Murphy-Bunting is playing the deep half of the field on the right, this play isolates him in coverage. After the ball is snapped, I want you to watch Ridley's stem. He accelerates vertical, and then once he crosses the hips of the linebacker at a depth of 5 yards, he angles his route inside. The goal of this angle as he crosses the 50 is for the outside cornerback to bite on a potential over route. This play design looks very similar to a Yankee concept that the Falcons like running, where Ridley crosses the field. While the cornerback didn't fall for this bait, watch how he flips his hips, anticipating that Ridley is going to go deep. This stem right here is exactly where Ridley excels. It's one of his best traits that he offers. He does such a good job of threading the deep ball that it opens the underneath route. Ridley accelerates to the 50 using nice variable speed. This opens the cornerback's hips to the inside, and then he goes for the kill and sharply breaks outside towards the sideline. Now, after Ridley broke on his route, I want you to watch his footwork and how crisply they are to cut this horizontally. This creates instant separation away from the deep right defender. After this, Ridley locates the ball, he realizes it's going to be thrown over his head, so he adjusts his path towards the sideline in order to make this catch. This is one of my favorite plays that Calvin Ridley made all season. It showcases everything I need to see for me to claim he's an elite player. It showcases excellent stem work to set up the outbreaking route, it showcases crisp footwork to bend his route horizontally on a dime, and it showcases perfect body control to adjust to an overthrown pass to make the catch by the sideline. Combined together, that's all you really need to see. Now, before we look at some of its advanced metrics, I want to give a huge shout out to HelloFresh for sponsoring this week's video. HelloFresh is here to make eating better and easier. No grocery stores, no stressful meal planning, just everything to prepare a wholesome, delicious meal all delivered to your door. I honestly have no idea why I've waited so long to try it, but trust me, it was definitely worth it. This week, my wife and I tried the chicken sausage spaghetti bolognese. It was so incredibly good. This meal was one of their Hall of Fame recipes, and needless to say, we were very impressed. The produce was fresh and had a ton of flavor, the meat was portioned perfectly for both to share, and the recipe was so easy to follow, it made the entire experience effortless. HelloFresh has more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, and they can all be finished in just about 30 minutes. Now, not only was everything delicious, but what honestly took the experience to the next level was just how flexible they were to fit my lifestyle. You can easily change your delivery days, you can add extra dinners or lunches to your orders, and in general, HelloFresh just makes the process so simple that I strongly recommend giving it a try. If you go to HelloFresh.com and use my code SAMGOLD14, you can get 14 free meals including free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com and use my code SAMGOLD14 to get 14 free meals including free shipping. So before the break, I mentioned that I want to look at a few of his advanced stats. Here are my 2 favorite metrics. First, you have yards per route run. This metric, provided by Pro Football Focus, looks at how many yards a receiver had while he was on the field. A receiver that is more heavily involved and that creates for himself will have higher numbers. Also, if you think about it, a receiver who drops passes will consequently have a lower number just because he isn't producing on those targets. I think this is a much better metric than yards per reception for that reason. During the 2020 season, the average receiver produced 1.6 yards per route run. Basically, anything above the average, or the orange line, means the receiver is more efficient than a receiver who's below. On the following screen, you can see this metric illustrated in a similar but different way. Essentially, the higher you up from the average line, the better you are. Calvin Ridley, who's in the box on your screen, is definitely on the high side. He produced 2.4 yards per route run. Meanwhile, a guy like Davante Adams, who's a top receiver in the entire game, he created a whopping 3 yards per route run. This is truly absurd. While yards per route run is one of my favorite metrics, the simple stat of drop rate is also pretty good to look at. This chart on your screen shows that. The average drop rate was just under 7% last season. If you're above the line, it obviously means you drop more than the average receiver. Ridley is unfortunately above that average. His drop rate was just over 9%. Now, 9% isn't awful, but it's certainly not the best. If he caught more of the passes that were thrown his direction, I guarantee you his yards per route run would be more in line with Davante Adams. And if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that Adams, he dropped only 1% of his targets. This again shows you just how good Adams is and where I think Ridley can get even better. With these metrics out of the way, let's go back to the film and look at another example. Here's a play from week 6 against the Vikings. I really like this one. Ridley is in a tight alignment on the left side of the formation. Similar to the play against the Bucs that I showed earlier, I want you to pay close attention to Ridley's stem and how he sets up his defender before making his cut. After the snap, Ridley first starts by pressing to his left in order to widen the cornerback outside. His goal is to create a path inside and threaten the dig or the crossing route. Instead, this was all a ruse. Watch how he steps inside and accelerates all before dropping his hips to break down towards the edge. He drops his hips on a dime and he flattens his path back towards the sideline. Now it's at this point where most wide receivers would stay on this line expecting the throw to come in rhythm and outside his body. Not being content, Ridley then works his way back towards the quarterback to further cement the separation from his defender. He catches it, slips a tackle or two, and then he grabs a couple of extra yards before getting taken down to the ground. Again, the key takeaway on this play was just how Ridley used his stem to create natural separation. Ridley did this all over his film. He is so damn good at this. On every single route, he can bend and use his natural leverage to his advantage. It's such a good skill to have. Outside of this play, my main takeaway from watching Ridley was that he doesn't really have that many weaknesses. This seems easy to say after he puts up over 1,300 yards, but the dude is so much fun to watch. The way he stems those routes and breaks down so easily and so sharply, I just feel like he's extremely effective on any route he's asked to run. In my opinion, a lot of this comes down to his understanding of his position, but it all comes down to pairing with his release footwork that he uses to get vertical. It's some of the best I've seen in the entire NFL. He's so quick at using a nice jab step vertical press to get up the field that it takes cornerbacks by surprise. The other thing he's really good at is simply accelerating out of his breaks. This seems simple on the surface, but he's so good at cleanly breaking and accelerating away from the defender that he can create separation against the best defenders in the NFL. The minute he breaks down horizontally or starts to come back down on a hitch or curl, he'll already be back 2 or 3 yards in an instant while the ball is still traveling through the air. He makes himself a very easy target for his quarterback. He's amazing on out routes, corners, and blaze outs, but he also uses that same vertical acceleration on slants in order to win early. He's a huge threat any way you look. While I do think Ridley is elite on the short and medium routes, his deep routes like post and goes aren't at the same level as these in and out breaking routes. I feel like he can get pushed a bit against a good man press corner. Now, I'm not saying he's bad or that defense can ignore him on those deep routes or anything like that, but I just think he's so much better at using the threat of his speed to create underneath horizontally, as opposed to using the threat of a horizontal move to create vertical instead. Now, with that being said though, he can definitely run a pretty good stutter and go that can take defenders by surprise. Outside of this comment on true vertical routes, I feel like I'm not the biggest fan of using him on screens and drags. Drags, for example, I feel like he comes back too far towards the line of scrimmage on his path. Like he'll bend his route and sometimes his route will almost go negative. Instead of doing this, he needs to push up the field first and then come back towards the quarterback to get open. For screens, on the other hand, Ridley dances way too much for my liking. Sometimes after he catches it, he'll just stand there dancing when I want him to push north to south. He doesn't always gain the 2 to 4 yards he's already been given. Now, overall, there's clearly a lot to like about Ridley as a player, even factoring these negatives. With his playstyle, he can fit any offense he's put into. Speaking of, the Falcons just hired Arthur Smith to be the head coach in Atlanta. I did a video on Derrick Henry and his run game on this channel, so if you're a Falcons fan, you should definitely check that out. Regardless, the passing game will feature a lot of concepts the Green Bay Packers currently use as Arthur Smith comes from that coaching tree. For example, you'll see a lot of middle read and other play-action dagger concepts, and Ridley will play well in those being the featured extra slot receiver. I expect Ridley to run a lot of overs, I expect a lot of slants. Basically, try to remember what Matt Ryan and Julio Jones looked like under Kyle Shanahan during the 2015-2016 seasons. It's my belief you'll see a ton of similarities next season. Then when you pair Calvin Ridley with Kyle Pitts, I think we'll enjoy watching this offense a lot more than we did last year. Well, that's it for this one. I really hope you enjoyed it. Next up, I want to look at a breakout receiver by the name of Darnell Mooney. While Allen Robinson is getting all the hype, and really deservedly so, Mooney is going to cement himself as a legit number 2 in that offense. I think with either Andy Dalton or Justin Fields as a quarterback, I think he's in for a big season. If you haven't already done so, please do me a huge favor and like and subscribe to this channel below. I would greatly appreciate that. As always, thanks again for watching, and you can find me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.